first this afternoon, and this week marks the 81st anniversary of a steamship setting sail from India to Africa. Now, it wasn't just any old voyage. It turned out to be a seriously ill-fated one, as it was sunk by the Japanese Imperial Navy. Well, Kash Kumar's grandfather was on board, and since learning of the story, Kash and his son Emil have been on something of a mission to find out more about what happened that night, but also to make sure that it's remembered. And it's led them to organising a commemoration at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich this week. Kash and Emil join us in the studio. Afternoon to you both.
Hi, how are you doing? Good afternoon.
Emil, it's nice to see you face to face. We've spoken many times before, but it's always been on Zoom because you live in Canada.
I know, it's crazy that I'm actually here in person with you, Ben. Thanks so much for having us.
It's great. It is great to see you. Kash, we've spoken many times before about this. Look, Emil, you've created a huge website with all the details on this, but just take us right back to the beginning. What is significant about the SS Tilawa?
This is the setting of the SS Tilawa is 5 years before independence from British rule, 3 years before the end of the war. British ship in British waters, maritime, Second World War, British Indian history. What makes this incident quite unique, the fact that we believe this was the only passenger ship that was attacked and sunk during the Second World War. And of course, when it comes to World War history, our minds and hearts easily gravitate to, hey, Winston Churchill and Hitler and the Blitz and Pearl Harbor and, Hiroshima. But what about the story of the Indian people? What about those leaving primitive means from villages in India and trying to make a better life on the continent of Africa? That really is the setting of the SS Tilawa story.
Kash, it's heart wrenching, isn't it? And for a long time, I mean, it's never been forgotten, but it's just not very well known.
Absolutely, Ben. And when you think about it, a lot of people are involved in this incident or this tragedy, and for some reason, well, generally speaking, it was a taboo subject. I suppose it became a folk tale. It's only when we started to research and families have now come on board, and well, I think every other day kind of like we get new stories coming on board. People are saying, wow, this is a true story. This really did happen, and we need some kind of closure to this,
How did it affect your family?
It affected all of us, as Emil will tell you in a few minutes, that I found out a few years before my father passed away. The story is, I mean, the grandfather that I thought was my grandfather was actually not my grandfather. And a few years before my father passed away, he showed us a picture. In fact, I saw a picture in the cupboard. And it's like, well, I don't understand who this young gentleman. So my father said, well, that's actually my real father. It's funny, after all these years, just a few years before he passed away, and it's about 5 years ago, and he said, that's my father. And then I started to get the story out of him, exactly what happened. And then he relayed a lot of information to my son here, Emil. So to know that his biological father actually suffered in this tragedy back in 1942 on the SS Tilawa. Of course, the grandfather who adopted him, brought him up, took him to Africa, from India to Africa, and then to the UK. We will always honour him. His name was Vallabhbhai Chibabhai Solanki. But we needed to get down to the bottom of, so what happened to my dad's real father? That's where the journey starts.
Emil, I have to say, you've thrown yourself into this. I mean, as a piece of family history, it's mind-boggling, isn't it? But this has become bigger than that. And because it's affected so many people from so many different parts of the world, you've tracked down survivors or relatives of survivors that almost didn't know what happened.
Yes, you always have to have a catalyst as to why you do something. I kind of break this down into two parts. My loyalty and sense of duty to resurrect the memory of someone who was forgotten, to have this new sense of pride to the lineage that I must carry. And then, there is the duty of public service to people of the Commonwealth, to people in India, Australia, Canada, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Kenya, Britain that have come forward. These, I'm going to be 37 in January, which means that anybody who was alive back in 1942, they've sadly passed away, or they're very close to finishing their earthly life course. So it's a very important time to just keep plugging away, going through that survivor list or missing persons list, and seeing if we can connect with these families to help bring them comfort, help bring them closure, connect them with our Tilawa family group, things of that nature.
Do you know, well, I haven't asked you this, but I should have done. Do you know how many people died or were classed as missing and how many survived?
So we had a total of 958 people on board, 4 gunners, 222 crew, 732 passengers, mostly Indian nationals. Now, after 2 days of fighting for dear life, 280 people perished and 678 people were rescued and brought back to Bombay, the Ballard Pier. So there were 2 ships that were responsible for the rescue mission, HMS Birmingham and SS Carthage.
It's an extraordinary story, isn't it? And there have been attempts at salvage in the past because of the cargo that it was carrying.
Look, you had 6,000 tons of cargo on this ship. You had 60 tons of bullion, silver bullion. That would be about 2,390 odd silver bars. Estimate value £32 million. And you see, for us, we were not so interested in the legal battle that has developed because of the salvage, but more because of the discovery back in 2017. It takes a lot of money, investment time, to actually scan waters over a period of 6 months, 3,500 meters deep, to try and use robotics to dangerously navigate through the waters to find the silver and then to safely get it back to Southampton.
Cash, this is an extraordinary story, isn't it? And but at its heart, we're talking about people who set off on a journey and were met with the most terrible situation.
Absolutely. I can only reflect from the stories that we've heard, but with my grandfather, Nichabai Chibabai Solanki, I mean, he set off as a young man of about 28. He had a young son, which was my father, of course. It was about 8 years old. And they set off. He set off with a cousin, travelled up to Bombay in a train, I suppose, got on the ship, got their tickets, and hoping to get to Mombasa and start a new life, set things up so they can emigrate and so forth. But Lord behold, did they know this would happen, bang, 2 a.m. in the morning. But the question is, I'm still kind of baffled why they would be sailing when they knew there would be submarines, Japanese submarines, in that vicinity, which was already destroying, I think, British ships and so forth because of World War II. But to allow a passenger ship from Bombay on a journey of many, many days, but they were towards north of Seychelles, and that's where he was targeted. But why was the ship why did they go? Were they aware of the danger, the percentage of danger? And, from what we've heard and the research, the crew just there was no kind of like, what's the word? When they were torpedoed once, what was the protocol then? An hour later, the second torpedo, that's when the ship went down. But the crew just jumped off the ship. Many of them survived. Even the captain jumped off the ship, and then left the passengers to every man for themselves, if that's the saying to go.
When we first started speaking about this, it was during COVID, actually, wasn't it? I mean, I remember Zooming with you and we chatted about how it was in Canada and all the rest of it. But look, the dream had always been to have a sort of a formal recognition of all of this and a kind of a memorialise it in some way, and that's exactly what's happening at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich. Which, I mean, I can't think of a more fitting place to have it. You've had events in India as well. Tell us about what's happening this week, though.
So, National Maritime Museum Greenwich There will be 138 people by invitation only seated at the Leopold Müller Theatre. It will be a 2-hour program. The curator for maritime heritage will start things off. My father will be chairing the event. I'll be participating with a little keynote address, including videos from families who are unable to attend. We'll have quite a comprehensive interview panel with the 2 survivors and some other families, trying to mix it up, representing the different faith groups, the Goan Catholics, Hindus, Muslims, people that survived, people that tragically died, trying to get the perspective of orphans and widows. And then we're going to have some special guest speeches. We'll have a moment of silence, and this will be the first time on British soil that the incident is acknowledged, the loss of life is memorialized, and we've waited 17 years for this moment.
I can't tell you what a joy it is to have you both in the studio. It's good. It is great. I mean, it's great to meet you in person, Kash. It's lovely to have you in again. Let's keep in touch, because it's not a story that ends, is it? This is just a part of it. You have a fabulous website which is constantly updated and bang up to date. How do people find it? Tilawa1942.com. TILAWA numerals 1942.com. If you'd like to watch the commemoration this coming Thursday, November 23rd on Zoom or YouTube, we will provide those details on our website. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you're everywhere. Well, we're trying. Because we want to be as accessible as possible. That's the thing. It's brilliant. Kash and Emil, thank you so much for coming in, and I hope it goes utterly brilliantly, and it's everything you hope it's going to be. Thank you for coming in. Thanks so much for the voice.